Welcome to the Thunderbolt Composite Squadron post-launch video.
Hello, this is the soil water retention experiment. Here I have the soil sample that has stayed here on the land, and this is the soil sample that was in the capsule that went up together with the balloon. The point of this experiment is to figure out whether space will affect the water retention of soil, as this will affect how the plants will grow in the soil. Now we can see how the samples basically have the same results. Both of them have retained the same amount of water, as I put in 1/8 of a cup of water in each of them, and they both have about the same water that is dripped through.
This is the PLA durability test. As you can see, the one on the left is straighter, and that is also the one on Earth, and then the one on the right is actually warped. Moving on to the flexibility test, the first thing we noticed is that the space sample actually splintered instead of breaking straight. It also did not have as much resistance as I was pulling it. On the second sample, Earth sample, it actually cracked instead of splintering, and it had way more resistance.
This is the oxidation of metal experiment. As we can see, the sample that was sent to higher altitudes was a lot faster and a lot more intense. But on the other hand, the sample that stayed on Earth, despite the video being longer, was actually a lot more slower and a lot less intense, as we'll see in the images coming up. The point of this experiment was to see how different ions would react when being exposed to higher altitudes. As we can see, after 12 hours, it's gotten a lot darker, while after 24 hours, as we can see, the one on Earth has gotten a lot more affected by the chemical.
Our experiment is to test the effects on high altitude on fabric. This experiment was conducted to hypothesize whether this material would be good for astronauts and what type of clothing would be durable to make astronaut spacesuits to protect them from the radiation of the sun. So we had one control sensor, the one that was set in the capsule. The one on Earth is a clean plain black color, while the one in space had more lint attachments. We measured the weight before and after the experiment, and both did not have significant change. They weighed 7 grams in the experiment. There was also no durability or stretch differences, as they both feel and are the same texture.
So for our experiment, we decided to do the yeast experiment, and some of the background research that we did behind that was first objectified by studying the effects of extreme radiation and microgravity on yeast cells. Our hypothesis was that most yeast cells will remain active with little to no impact on their reproduction in the ozone layer. With this, we predicted that the yeast reproduction will proceed as normal, similar to conditions on Earth. And our reasoning behind that was that yeast serves as a model organism due to its simplicity and known cellular processes. And investigating yeast reproduction under high-altitude conditions can provide insights into biological responses to high-altitude travels and make breakthroughs in the science of bioastronautics.
My name is Cadet Staff Sergeant Gupta, and I was assigned to test the biological effects of yeast in high altitudes and to check its changes on its biological properties. The first sample here is the sample that was kept here on Earth, and as you can see, there are many blue cells that absorb the staining, which represents that the cells are dead, hence they allowed the staining into the cell. The second sample here is the sample that was sent into the ozone layer and exposed to high levels of radiation. And as you can see, there are a lot more less stained cells than the cells that were not stained, meaning the cells that aren't blue are the cells that are alive and restricted the staining to enter the cell. This means that the biological samples sent into high altitudes can have an effect on its growth, and as it would potentially speed up the process of reproduction.
The money we could win from the competition could be used for different squadron activities and educational materials. We could use the money towards cadet scholarships for encampments and summer activities, or use it for funds going towards orientation rides. The money can also be spent on aerospace materials such as drones to educate cadets. The Altitude Balloon Challenge was extremely beneficial for the cadets that participated in it. Together we were able to learn about the standard experimental process and more about critical thinking skills. We were also able to expand our knowledge about aerospace that will help us in our journey through civil air patrol.